Welcome to the Sin City Programmers Meetup. Today we're going to be talking about a guide to building with AI. And so many of you are building products with AI integrated, specifically AI features, and not just building with it, but you're trying to really enhance your customer experience with AI. And we're going to go through like a practical perspective that I have had to come up with to make sure that I am building things of value. So we're going to go into that, but a little bit about myself. My name is Justin Otero. I'm a director of engineering at Navan, as well as an organizer here at this meetup. And then I'm a co-founder with my wife on Value Driven Careers, where we help software engineers grow in their career, increase their impact, influence, and income. Well, let's get started. So where did this perspective come from? I want you to understand a little bit about my role, the market that I work in, and the challenges. So my role as a director of engineering, I oversee a big portion of the fintech platform at Navan. So all things expense management. And with that, it's the main product we're selling to admins to get control and visibility over all their spend, analyzing it, corporate card management, the income, all the taxes, everything along those lines. Now, the market that Navan goes after is a very broad market, but it needs to work for a 10-person company as well as global companies. Some of our customers are Heineken, Netflix, Zoom. They work in all markets, issuing in all different currencies, as well as multi-languages, and there's nuances of taxes, VAT, really across the board. And the challenge is every feature has to scale both ways. It needs to be simple enough for a small company to onboard, as well as it needs to be flexible enough for enterprises. So day by day, my goal has been balancing that simplicity, accuracy, and adaptability at scale. Really difficult. I by no means can do it by myself, but when you are managing software engineering teams, you have to be a really good steward of those resources. And this is where I push back on our product team, our UX team, really what sales is expecting for enterprise customers, everything in between. Now, why I wrote this is there is so many conversations right now around AI. There's a lot of hype, and with that comes pressure. If you're not building with AI, you're not introducing those things, you're falling behind, and I need to cut through that noise. As well as, I've mentioned it before earlier, you can really build something that sounds impressive, that demos really well, but it is not valuable, right? And a couple years ago, we rolled out an AI feature that was very much that. It looked good in a big product demo, and no one used it because it really wasn't useful. As well as, I need to focus myself and the teams on delivering that value. When you are managing those expectations, my accountability is to deliver on timelines consistently, deliver that quality, and manage those trade-offs and make good, consistent decisions. These principles, we're going to go through each of these, and this is what I'm using internally, externally, when thinking about building AI features and products. Now, this is really where I want you to lock in and think about how it's going to apply to you. As we go through each of these, think about what you're building. Think about the challenges that your users have, and really what I want you to leave with is challenging the what and the why behind what you're doing. Let's go into each one of these. So, the first principle is to start with removal, not addition. The idea is AI shouldn't be this thing that you bolt on to your application or your experience, We want to be AI forward. So to do that, you need to think about what can you actually remove from the experience in favor of AI. And this will prevent that constant comparison between manual workflow and an agentic workflow. And it'll start to become the default way your users are interacting with your system. So in essence, like less is more here. But how do you actually apply this? Well, think about your onboarding, your setup, your configurations. These are often full of steps, forms. This is a great place to add AI as a way to guide your user through it. We want to remove some of that friction. And so when you remove that, ultimately it will become that natural way of users interacting with your product. Next up. Not everything that runs automatically is intelligent. We mix up automation and AI. So automation handles those repeatable, event-based, time-based actions. AI is going to reason, it's going to adapt, it's going to be insightful, and we shouldn't lump those in together. When you get clarity on that, you can have a better conversation with your teams on where AI can come in around that. And what I really mean by that is AI is going to be the before and after. When you get really clear on what's rule-based versus what's reason-based, you can actually create something really, really good that enhances everything in those automation steps. So think about your notifications, your approvals, data-driven like syncs and reports that happen repeatedly. AI can focus on the before, which is deciding when that automation should trigger, right, specific to a customer's instance, and then interpreting it after, right, pulling those insights and adapting based on those results. So when you do that, the overall user experience will become a lot more intentional. Next up is design for patterns, not opinions. This one I think I hold very dear to me, but some customers are louder than others. And when you're in a SaaS product, you're trying to close deals. Big customers like Netflix, they can start to guide your roadmap through like a customer advisory board. You may have an opportunity in a market where you're trying to target maybe a younger demographic, right? Like these segments, you can get distracted by it. And so if you were to focus on the workflows and the personas, those will scale across the system and everyone will start to benefit. So when you do this, I think, you also get really the measurements because your workflows and opinions already have KPIs tied against them. And as you start to introduce these new workflows with AI, you get to leverage what you've already been tracking, what you've already built, those dashboards, those metrics. And if you focus on improving those, as I said, it'll scale across. So you want to design for patterns, not anecdotes. And the data will help you really focus on that. All right, this next one is really, really important, especially in a financial system that we build. Being slightly wrong is the same as being completely wrong. Now, if you're off once, customers really, they start to question everything. They will start to lose confidence. And the moment you do that, they start double checking everything. Now, AI features, they need to be dependable. Everyone knows that. But like I said, that small error will actually exponentially increase the work. So off by one, off by all. Imagine you are generating a report, and in our case, month-end close. This is something that all businesses do, and they're doing at scale. So when we have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars at this point, going through and you have to close month-end, and you have all these transactions, if those transactions don't total up, if something's missing in one column, all of a sudden, now it's not just that being wrong, but now what else is wrong? Do we need to go back and verify the previous reports? That is exponentially more work for your users, and it's very difficult because they want to trust your system. It needs to be predictable, and sometimes when you go in with an approach with AI, you're thinking that it's just going to be deterministic automatically, and that's not going to be the case here. So the accuracy isn't about numbers, it's about trust. There was a question.
So I found with AI, it seems like it's almost part art, part science, in the sense of sort of like the responses, right? You're saying it's not as deterministic. Like, I'm curious if you want to elaborate on it more. Just it's almost like, it's weird because you like push the button and if you push the button 3 times, the same thing doesn't happen 3 times.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to actually talk about that in the next coming principles. So it'll address those concerns. So we want to enhance people and processes, and specifically through assistance. When you go for a replacement approach, what happens is now 100% accuracy is needed, and that's going to be rarely achievable. So to your point, you know, if you go with that replacement approach, it has to be perfect. But insistence, again, creates leverage, as well as it's going to foster that ownership, right? If you just replace some of these processes, all of a sudden we start to become negligent. We shift ownership and say, well, it's the AI's problem, right? Anything that is produced, people need to take ownership of. And that's why we want to leverage and really enhance those processes, enhance your employees. So what does that actually look like? Well, going back to that reporting example, instead of launching with a fully AI-generated report, which automatically you're thinking like, can I trust this? You can actually roll out a feature where AI is going to review the report, look for anomalies, look for themes between this report and previous reports, surfacing those insights. And as you start to do that, you actually develop trust with your customers, right? They are starting to get more interested in how AI is helping them, right? So that will build that trust, increase accuracy, and also give you a place to measure how effective it's going to be over time. Now, the next one here is not every small gain is worth the cost. So as you are looking at some of your workflows, those incremental improvements, they are valuable, right? We've all heard the 1% improvement starts to compound. There are diminishing returns here. So sometimes that 1% of polish, it's gonna demand 30% of the effort. So the goal is progress, but not perfection. And more importantly, you know, where are those trade-offs? So as you're managing your team, as you're looking at your entire system, like, is this really where I want to put my resources? What this looks like as you start to apply it is perfect, is expensive, useful, scales. So think about that workflow that you may have in your head. Maybe it's an approval process and you could spend weeks refining it. However, saving a single click for a user really may not be worth the effort. And more importantly, your users already have muscle memory, right? And you start to discount that. And so those small gains can look really good in a demo, but when you have to build it, you have to test it, you have to maintain it, you can start to put those efforts in other places. Now, this is one piece of it, right? This next principle is thinking in systems, not one-offs. all of you are probably thinking of a feature, or maybe even introduced a feature where it's kind of a dead end, right? It's just like this one thing that does it and it's over. Like that's the extent of what you're considering to be AI forward. But these features, they're not one and done. They need to be extended, they need to be evaluated and improved. And when you're talking internally with your teams, you have to understand that this is a long-term investment, right? You can't just ship this and not come back to it, right? Now, if you do that, it can start to connect with the other efforts that you're building. So in the previous example, we talked about the cost of going after those last few percent. This is the extension of that. When you start to go from a one-off approach and start to think about your system, as you deliver more AI-driven, intelligent agents, they can start to interact with each other. And what one workflow introduces makes the next workflow much better. And that's that system effect that we want to start to go after. That long-term approach will consider the improvements and implementations within the system, and as one part of that system gets smarter, the next step, the next workflow, all of those things start to get better. And that's really that strategic long-term AI approach. And that's where when you're chasing that last 5%, that last 5% actually isn't going to be that valuable. When you bring that to the next AI feature, that's where it's good enough. Last one I want to talk about is context creates clarity. You have all used a LLM to chat with, and we always say like be specific, right? Ask for a car. Are you going to get a Prius or a Hummer or a truck? Like you don't really know. The same thing goes for what you're building, right? If you've started to look at the taxonomy of AI features, you hear about agents, right? And you'll hear someone say like, oh, I have a sales agent. That sales agent is very generic, right? So scissors can outperform a knife when you know what you're cutting. A Swiss Army knife is because you don't know what you're gonna need and when you're gonna need it. When you start to build things generally, it's very expensive. It's hard to get those things into production, and it's very hard to measure the success of them. So when you think about a workflow is made up of many different tasks, right? It's not just this, like a sales pipeline, right? Like that's actually made up of very specific roles, and each task in that workflow can actually be an agent. Agents need to be able to interact with one another. They need to be able to review each other's work, delegate tasks, pass them back for review. And so anyone who's saying like we have one agent, that is absolutely not enough. And it's too difficult to measure and evaluate the success of it. And so think of, you need many different agents, right? If you had a restaurant, there's not usually one chef, right? There's a person who does prep, there's a person who expedites, there's a person who is a garde-manger, takes care of like the cold dishes, right? Like there are very specific specialty. And all of those put together produce a really good experience for the customer. And that's the same thing we want to do here. We want to start small, we want to solve precisely, and once you've proven the value and consistency, then you move on to the next task in your workflow and you build an agent just for that. So to kind of go back over these, we want to start with removal, not addition. Not everything that runs automatically is intelligent. We're designing for patterns, not opinions. Off by one, off by all. It's honestly shorter. I should have just named it that. We want to enhance people and processes through assistance. Not every small gain is worth the cost. Think systems, not one-offs. And then, of course, context creates clarity. So how do I apply these? How should you apply these? Really, it's not a checklist, right? These are principles you can stand on, and the goal is not to apply every single one of them, but instead, you want to be thinking about it, and it's gonna force you to slow down, to make good decisions, to ask better questions, and to challenge the assumptions that you and your team are working under. So if you can track back to one or more of these principles when you're deciding what to build and how to build it, that's good enough, right? You're not gonna get all of these, and that's by no means the intention, but what we are really trying to do is, like I said, make those good and consistent decisions, be good stewards of the customer experience and our resources, and that's how we're gonna produce the best results for our customers and really drive impact and revenue for your business. Okay, that kind of rounds it off. Now, I'm sure there are questions. We can get into it. You can scan the QR code if you do want this. You're gonna have to contact me on LinkedIn because I did not have the time to package it all up nicely for you. I'll also post this slide deck on the YouTube, so you'll have it there. And actually I can post it in the meetup. And this meetup, there's a link on there, like SCP meetup, so you can like get to the meetup group on LinkedIn, etc. So kind of have a bunch of stuff there. But I want to hold this space for questions. Go ahead.
Two things. One, can you go back 2 slides? So I'm going to say Justin's wrong. You should have to do more than one of these. I'll tell you how to do number 8 with everything. So number 8 is hugely important with AI. And whatever you're working on, break it up into some different pieces. Now, fair disclosure, I've been using my SQL very aggressively for more than a decade. So I automatically say, well, I can just chunk this all out. But if you're looking for predictable results, I would say use 8 100% of the time, and then maybe pick one. And the second thing is less a question, but let's talk about the job work, because Jacob had commentary on it.
Oh, okay. And we'll get there. And honestly, that's why I wanted to land with 8, because yes, like 8 is super, super important. And I think like that is, if you were to leave with one of them, leave with that one, right? Like that just, you'll be pretty safe with that. And again, if you go back to like why I had to develop this, right? We are a massive company, right? There are a lot of decisions that I don't get to make myself. And so if I can distill this in a way where I can give it to other people, we all start to think the same, start to really understand the why behind what we're doing. And it just is a way to scale my thought process with the team. And just like I said, keep me grounded. Question?
One of the techniques I do is I count how the word and.
Nice.
And it should be very few, if none.
Right.
None ideally. So if I'm saying and this and this and this, the more ands you add, the more fucked up it gets. Like it just like it's like you want to have the person putting the battery in the box. And that's all they do for their whole day.
Well, and like, if you're having like a language model or something, focus on one specific task. So I just made a prenup builder that I'm pretty excited about. Smart marriage is genius. But we do 4 passes on it.
It's so good.
So initially we generate the contract, and the second pass is see if there's any conflicts in the contract. So that way it's able to focus just on that particular task at that stage. So you're not having to, one, pad it to try to get it too much the first time, and then the second time it's actually just laser focused on something. So just because you have like one back and forth with the API, or if you're doing something on-prem, like thinking doing like chains of these things, because then you get super reliable results.
Like in that example, right, as you're passing it back and forth, right, it's the prompt that's changing, right? One way to expand on that so you can really, really measure the results and actually build an eval around it is each pass is a specific agent, and each component of the prenup can have a specific agent that specifically knows about the financials, an agent that specifically knows about disagreements and resolutions, right? So you can actually build out a team, right, like a law firm just for the prenup builder. And with each of those, you can measure how well each of those agents are performing, and you are more so having one agent orchestrate all of that and pass it in between those. So it's like when you start to look at how these workflows from an agentic way are expanding, it's really about how you want to organize your taxonomy. Now, again, that is like the context creates clarity. That talks a little bit about the measurement, right? Like those workflows that you're measuring. So like you can see how like all of this will like come together. But yeah, like I don't want to get too much into the how you should build things, and more so like how you should think about it, right? And just challenge any of your assumptions.
But these are, you're designing this deck, or this slide specifically at the lowest level.
Yeah.
Pyramid, basically, where you could, like you mentioned, that you call it your orchestrator, but
Yeah.
your orchestrator might encompass like 4 or 5 of those groupings that just manage the groupings, but that's its only role to do.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? How are we doing on time? Good. Nice.
Justin, this is amazing.
Thank you.
I was just telling Abby, like, this is basically another extension of the talk I just did. But it was weird that we're basically on similar wavelengths on this, considering I only made my topic like 2 weeks ago. So, no, this is fantastic criteria.
Well, and you know, we should probably collaborate on some stuff. That's true. Yeah. So I do want to like finish with some one more thing before we like shift the conversation to the job board. As many of you know, I do have a coaching program, and if you know software engineers who are looking to grow in their career, increase their impact, income, and influence, I'm starting a new cohort in January. Now, if you hire engineers, I promise you that, yes, they want to have more, but in order for them to have more, they do have to do more. And in order to do more, they have to be more, as Myron Golden would say. But as a engineering leader, I want to instill engineering excellence with my teams. All right? I want them to scale, and I want to get the most out of them and create a career growth path. And that's really why I created this coaching program. So if you know anyone who is interested in growing their career as a software engineer, getting to those senior staff levels, becoming a tech lead, really getting to those early leadership roles, this program will help them. And like I said, the cohort starts in January, and they can use the Tech Alley code to get a limited time price before we start the program. So thank you for that, and we will shift the conversation to the job board if anyone is interested. I'll leave this up for now. Yeah, okay, so we've started a job board, and it has been so hard. The premise for like this meetup, like in general, is we want to deliver value. We want to deliver value to the community, and you know, it's one thing to just come in and get poured into, but it's another thing to like give back to the community. And we have really talented, smart people who is also looking for jobs, right? And we have people who are hiring. Now, it's crazy that you're probably sitting next to someone who can give you a job, and you're sitting next to the person who you can like honestly bill for their hours, right? And like, what's the problem, right? Like how can we like connect that? The thought was, we want to create a job board, but yes, you have LinkedIn, Glassdoor. I think Handshake is out there now. We have Wellfound. Like, there's all these new and existing marketplaces for job seekers and employers. But what we have is different. We have a community, and you're sitting next to these people. So we wanted to really build a job board for Tech Alley, something that you can, one, figure out who you need to hire, because that's extremely difficult in of itself. A lot of people are business owners, startup founders, and they're not sure, do I need an iOS developer, an Android developer, or like, do I even need any mobile development, right? So this job board should be able to really facilitate that, as well as give a place for job seekers and employers within this community. We've started on this journey. It's meant to be more of like an open source project, which means when you have time and you feel like it, which I don't have time and I don't feel like doing a lot of things. But we have some really good people who have volunteered already. And just doing something as a community is so difficult. But the fact that we are having regular conversations, we do have a Slack community where we're collaborating. We actually have some people in here, Jacob and Chris, who have already started on some of the stuff. We have some of the UI worked on, authentication and the database relationships for how user management is going to be rolled out. That's being worked on. And then Joshua Stacy, looming in the background here, he's hosting all the infrastructure, which is super important because this stuff costs money, right? It's not free, and we need a playground to do this stuff, and he's really hosting all of this, right? So there's a lot of things going on there.